Welcome to the Seasonal Movement Podcast. In this episode, we have the pleasure to talk to Ari. He is a coach that specializes on ADHD. Did I say that right? ADHD. I always put an extra H in it. And it doesn't matter how much I read about it, how much I talk about it. There is something about those letters together that always comes off. But for many years, I have been saying that a dysfunction, like what we perceive as a dysfunction, is often a misbalance, is often a misrhythm, a misalignment. And today we bring that into focus. Essentially, how the ADHD can be seen as a misalignment, as a misbalance, as something that is not a crippling. I don't know, like how people call it, right? Like it's not doesn't have to be crippling, and I have personally experienced that firsthand with significant others around me that experience it, and then in a little different way, I have become aware of my own seasonal affective disorder, which is not just the winter blues, but also the hypomania in the summer, like being a little too out there, being too spontaneous. So I have been waiting for this episode for a while, and this is going to be a treat, guys. So enjoy the show. I want to welcome Ari. Ari, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. So my name is Ari. I'm from Israel, and I'm a holistic ADHD coach for men. And it's a pleasure to be here, Rue, and thank you for having me.
Oligistic, that's a great word before everything else, right? So
Yeah.
I think that we can start with that, right? Like, what will be the difference between a ADHD coach and a holistic ADHD coach?
So as a holistic ADHD coach, I believe that a person can learn how to live with their ADHD without taking pharmaceutical drugs, without taking medication. I believe, and I help men, right, who don't want to be on medication, right, who are afraid to feel like a zombie from the meds, who are afraid that the meds are going to take them over and they're not going to be themselves. And they actually, besides that, they want to actually not rely on a pill. They want to know, how can I deal with this practically that I feel confident and healthy with what I'm doing in my life? So a holistic ADHD coach is someone who focuses on implementing systems, teaching you real practical skills. And me personally, I infuse alternative medicine into my coaching, specifically energy work. So,
Wow.
yeah.
What you just said, I probably have like 10 questions, and I'm sure I'm going to keep forgetting them, but I hope they keep coming up because you started with medication. I have to go there. As I was experiencing the winter blues, some of the options are actually medication, and it's essentially synthetic neurochemicals or hormones that help you balance or take up perhaps serotonin or dopamine, whatever is missing during that season. And it wasn't tempting perhaps, but it was an option.
Mhm.
And I thank God that I moved towards light therapy. And it wasn't the perfect solution, but at least I went away from medication. Can you tell me why you think that is important?
To move away from medication.
What perhaps not to move away, but to use other sources for improving, or perhaps whether it's cognitive or performance or well-being, not
Mhm.
just depending only on medication, perhaps.
Okay. So with medication, right, we're relying on something. Right? That is the biggest issue, right? And this is the biggest controversy when you come and talk to people who are pro medication when it comes to ADHD and who are anti medication. Someone who is pro medication will tell you that this pill, whether it be Ritalin or Adderall, it will help you manage your symptoms and you're going to be able to feel like you don't have ADHD. You're going to feel like you don't have any brain fog. You're going to feel like you can just be like everyone else. But then what happens? That pill wears off, right? Eventually the pill has to wear off. There's no magical pill that you take it one time and then you're everything's good, right? Everything's fixed. There's no such thing. So every pill wears off eventually. And then what happens? You have to take it again, right? And when that one wears off, you take it again and again. It's a never ending cycle. Once you run out of your pills, what do? You get a new prescription, you fill it up, you take it again. Now, from a holistic standpoint, is why should you have to be reliant on a substance to help you feel like you can conquer the world? Whether or not you have ADHD or not shouldn't make a difference. You were created in this world with this thing that is labeled as ADHD, right? So when I'm working with someone, I want someone to feel 110% confident that they are not crippled, that they believe in themselves, right? And to do that, we have to change the way they think about themselves. Because unfortunately, a lot of men that struggle with ADHD have negative beliefs. They think negative about themselves, right? Because we're criticized so much, starting at such a young age. By the time you reach like the age of 12, you think that you're like this stupid dude, God forbid. You think that you can't do anything right. You're comparing yourself your entire life to everyone around you. Therefore, you don't think that you're worthy, right? You don't think you're good enough. So, from a holistic approach, we are learning not just real practical skills, but also how to implement certain systems so you can actually feel like you got tools in your toolbox for whenever you're going through what you're going through. And we go through a lot.
Wow. So again, about 10 more questions pop up, but I'm going to drop a little bit of my own perspective in this, which is that
Please.
our brain is constantly on a state of change. Our brain is never on a fixed state. We either are producing certain neurochemicals, certain hormones, and surely there is an ideal harmony and balance within it, but it depends on so many functions, like what are we going to perform right now. For example, like when you're performing sports, you perhaps want your adrenaline to be a lot higher than if you're going to take a test. The same way that depending of the season, like sometimes during certain seasons, the tendency is to drop on certain neurochemicals. Perhaps during that season you want to do things that increase that neurochemical so that you are in some sort of a balanced, harmonious state, which, by the way, is never the same. That is one of the biggest issues that I see when ADHD is labeled as different, because aren't we all different? What is so unique when you are trying to be the same person than everybody else, which, by the way, it just doesn't exist. We're in a constant state of change. That is my opinion when it comes down to trying to normalize somebody. Now, if you perhaps look at it as trying to improve performance, well, now you got my attention. So, what is that you are bringing to your client's life, Ari, that is improving their performance? Because I bet you're not trying to normalize them. I bet you're probably just trying to, increase their superpowers and use them in the best way, right?
Right, absolutely. You know, and I don't know if it's specific to just me. I would like to think that every coach, whether it's an ADHD coach or a seasonal coach or an anxiety coach, that when we're working with someone, we are encouraging and bringing out the best version of themselves. And with ADHD, one of the ways that we go about doing that is we've been, yes, ADHD is a superpower. Let's make that very clear. And on top of that, though, there are things with our ADHD mind that can be very, very difficult and annoying. You know, like you could tell someone, I was speaking with someone today, right? And he wanted to sign up for the ADHD group coaching that I host. And I told him, you know, this is my email, and then moments later, he was like, what's the email? So it's like our mind could be like focusing on one thing. It could have been that he was focusing on a different part of my message and he didn't see the email, right?
Hmm.
And also another part of that, like I told him something and he didn't see it. He like ended up doing the opposite. So it's like there's so many things within the mind that can make it very difficult. So when I'm working with someone that has ADHD, it's bringing out those good points. Very, very important. Because if we continue to go down this line where we just see ourselves in a negative light, we're not going to be able to bring in positivity, to bring in those good points because there's no space for them. So we have to make space for it.
I do want to touch on the mindset and essentially a self perspective, the image that we create about ourselves. I'm going to touch on that, but the one thing that I have to ask is that I truly believe that there is duality in this world. That
Mhm.
whether it's evil or good, or whether it's high energy or low energy, or everything existing in a dual model, meaning we often get the exact same amount, just differently distributed. So, for example, let's call the ideal mind the yin yang, like it has the ideal curve. Now, let's talk the ADHD mind, or any mind for this example. That curve perhaps might be a lot more pronounced. Like the lower parts are a little lower and the higher parts are a little higher. So there's like a more pronounced curve. And I don't know, like this is just a question, by the way. I'm not stating that this is the way it is or not. But the question is, when you're seeing those superpower, I imagine that they have something to do with the curve that is the highest. And then when we see some of the challenges, perhaps are the curves that are the lowest. So I feel that when we try to focus on bringing that lower curve a little higher by just the fact that we live in a dual world, we have to also bring the higher curve a little lower because it has to be a harmonious state for it to survive in our system. So I just kind of want to state that as a base to follow with the following question. Have you noticed that when we work on the lower curve, the higher curve also lowers? Oh, and he said like, and sorry, when you increase the lower curve, the higher curve also lower. And is that the goal when we're talking about a natural brain? Or the goal is to leave it the way it is and learn how to deal with it, accept and surrender to your natural brain, to who God made you to be. Surrender completely and trying to forget about changing anything, but actually learning into discovering who you truly are. Because, by the way, you are not using meds anymore. I want to touch about that too, how it takes the mask away and it truly reveals you who you are. Can you add some sense to it? Because I know what I'm saying is an example, but I'm sure you know exactly what's going on.
So I would say it's the second option that you gave, right? We're not trying to change anyone. You have, like, not you specifically, but a person who has ADHD, you have ADHD, right? That's not changing, right? Now, I know people who claim, oh, I found the cure to ADHD, right? I no longer have ADHD symptoms. I'm healed. Praise God, right? Um, and I don't believe in that. I don't believe that there is a cure. What
I
I do believe,
relate.
you relate to that? Good. We're on the same page. Like I,
Yes,
and it's not, and I'm also not looking for a cure,
I
right?
agree.
I think having ADHD can be a blessing. And I also think there's things about it that could be very challenging. But last time I checked, any challenge that I've had to go through ended up making me a stronger person because I put the
Hmm.
time and the energy of learning how to overcome it. And there's no difference when we're talking about this.
I agree. So I have to bring a little bit of contrast, even though seasonal affective disorder is a different animal. Essentially, what we're talking is crippling labels that we can accept and that we can try to resist, and then hence expand it and make it our world and our identity and go into that suffering. I experienced seasonal affective disorder, and at the beginning I thought that there was some sort of battle with the winter. It's kind of like the issue, right? And then I realized, wow, this is teaching me so much about myself. And the reason that I'm going through this is because there is this duality that I also go through in the summer. The issue is not the winter or my mind, the issue is my routine and how I'm building my life around the environment that is consistently changing. And at
Mhm.
any given point, since I'm so out of whack, I'm suffering the consequences. Can you tell me about the importance of the environment and the routines when it comes down to improving one's life, whether we have a crippling tag on us or not? But from your perspective, we can keep it with the crippling tag, which is nothing that just a man made name to it.
Right. So, in schools, right, when you're a kid, if you can't sit down and pay attention, something's wrong with you, right? That's what society tells us, right? Your kid can't sit down and pay attention in a class, something's wrong with him. It could be, has anyone stopped to think it could be that maybe this kid has just no interest of what this teacher is talking about? So if you were to take that kid out of that classroom and into an environment that he would thrive in, you would see a completely different kid. And I have interviewed, not that long ago, I interviewed a master potter, a man who's been doing pottery in the city of Sfat in Israel, where I live, for 50 years. Not just in Israel, but Israel and in the UK. He's been practicing pottery for 50 years. And he has seen ADHD kids come to him, kids who've been told that they can't sit still and they can't concentrate. And then once they start doing pottery, it's like, who is this kid? It's a completely different kid, you know? So, yeah,
So that comes down to a question, which is we have this environment that has been made for the average person, and we want everybody to fit into it. The question is, how much control do we have over that environment once you realize? And let me ask a question: Is that the key? Is the key working on your environment? Is that one of the keys? How important
absolutely.
it is? Okay, so can you go into like why is that the key?
Yeah. There's a lot of different examples, okay? But I think the most famous example I can think of, right, is that when Avraham Avinu, also known as Abraham, right, in the Bible, right, it says lech lecha, which means you need to leave from yourself, go from yourself. And what did God tell Abraham, right? He told him that you need to leave the land that you come from and you need to go to the land that I'm going to show you. It's because, and before he did this, his name wasn't Abraham, it was Abram, right? He had to leave where he came from, and he only became Abraham, right, after he left. Sometimes we have to leave an environment that is not healthy for us in order for us to become the person we're supposed to be. And that applies to same thing, whether you're learning in a classroom. If you're not learning well in a classroom, maybe you should go to an out of the box type of school. Maybe you should look into homeschool. Like, I think a lot of times we feel like this way and there's no other way. But if we start to use this beautiful thing that God gave us called a brain, right? And we start researching things and we start to realize that this is not the only option for me. There are tons of options. I just need to research. I need to expand my mind. I need to see what is out there. Because obviously, what I'm doing right now isn't working. So, what could work? And to know that there are options.
So for the person that wants to follow this pattern, which is very practical, the I feel like the habit loop is a great way to look at it, which is that in the environment there is always a cue in the environment, whether you're sitting in a classroom, whether there is a teacher, or you are at home and it's your mom or you are online and you're at a computer, that's the environment triggering you a cue, which
Hmm.
for some people might be interesting or not. That is happening at a neurological sense. So there's usually a memory that is charged with emotion that triggers a chemical. So do you know what is the chemical that doesn't allow somebody with ADHD to just pay attention when something really doesn't bring any interest?
Yeah.
What is that difference in the mind compared to what society calls normal people, which none of us are, by the way?
Hmm. Exactly. We all have our stuff, you know.
Yeah.
With ADHD, we really struggle with having healthy levels of dopamine. We're constantly
Mm.
chasing dopamine. Now, something that's very important that every person that has ADHD is you have to learn how to obtain healthy levels of dopamine. Because you can obtain dopamine through pornography, right? It's not healthy. And I wouldn't suggest that or recommend that to anybody, right? You can obtain dopamine through drinking, through getting drunk. I wouldn't suggest that to anybody, right? But learning how to eat properly can increase your dopamine levels. Exercise, specifically like high interval intensity training, like HIIT, right? Can increase your dopamine. Meaningful conversations like we're having today can increase your dopamine. So it's not just knowing what the chemical imbalance is or the lack of chemical that we're receiving, but how do I receive it? How do I
Mm.
get healthy levels of this? You know? And so that's what we're trying to do.
It's so interesting. I have to do a shameless plug here because it all comes down, perhaps, it all somehow lands into your routine and your behavior. And from my perspective, in my method, what I always work on is on your sleep, your exercise, your nutrition, your relationships, your outdoor connection, your novelty. That's the order. Like you're
Hmm.
talking about dopamine, like having something exciting to do that you know that you can delay gratification because you just gotta wait till Friday, you get to go play basketball with the boys or whatever that
Right.
is. But I think that even though we're talking perhaps or we're specializing in different subjects, I always find that a very common ground that we all arrive to is to behaviors. That happens to be the final end of the loop, but
Hmm.
it always comes down to it. So I just want to highlight that. And what I also want to do is to bring to the first portion, because you already mentioned it. What happens before that behavior? You were talking about mindset, you were talking about identity, you were talking about the power of the mind. So that is what happens first. Is that right?
What do you mean? What in what
Um,
sense?
So again, following the habit loop, there is a seasonal cue that triggers a memory that is emotionally charged. During that process, you get the decision. You need to make the decision of what is that you're gonna do. Are you
Hmm.
gonna seek the cheap dopamine? Are you gonna seek the healthy dopamine? Are you gonna be able to contain yourself and perhaps pay attention or do what you have to do in the moment? Before that decision happens, that emotionally charged memory is also called a mindset. You mentioned the word mindset, and I want to go into detail on that because that is the beginning. And that's what I say.
Right.
Then a response, that's the behavior, and then the
Right.
reward of the behavior, and that continues the loop. So at the
Okay.
beginning of that loop, we got to talk and we got to address mindset, identity, and the power of the mind. So can you tell me about what is that is so exciting, important, and unique about having that in a healthy manner and how you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I would say in anything in life, right? You have to have a healthy mindset, right? If your mindset is, again, negative beliefs, then that's how you're going to be operating. There is a rabbi, his name is Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Now, one of his famous teachings was if you're able to focus on all the positive things in your life, then you will only see positive in your life. And it's the same thing when it comes to other people. If you're only able to focus on the positive character traits of another person, then you will only see the positive character traits in that person. And that is the mindset. I can choose to focus on only the good, positive traits of my ADHD, right? And then I will see my ADHD as a blessing. But if I'm going to dwell on all the things I struggle with, then when I think of my ADHD, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to think of all the negative things.
So again, the difference between a cripple and a superpower is just matter of perception. Is the identity that we have been able to create. So, something interesting about the brain is that when it comes to that memory that triggers that identity, whether it's that I just talked to my coach, I build this identity, I feel so much powerful. The memory highlights that you go in that direction. But before that happens, the people that come with a negative mindset, perhaps about ADHD, they feel that emotion. Oh my gosh, I forgot the email of the guy. And then they go in a different direction. So, switching the tape, what is important here is that we all have the power to switch our tape, to switch our mindset and create having the tools. I think when you're talking about tools and life skills, I think it all comes down to creating new neural pathways, new trees that are positive. And I think, Ari, that's what it sounds to me that your clients are able to do. They are completely changing and rewiring their mind to see
Absolutely.
ADHD as their superpower.
Not just to see it as their superpower, but they're rewiring their mind to now starting to focus on all the beautiful things that make them them.
Let me give you an example. Like for me, again, going back to the winter blues and seasonal affective disorder, at the beginning, it was crippling. Like, there is pain that comes with it. Like you said earlier, the pain makes us grow. The
Mhm.
pain is a gift. The pain is what has me on this podcast right now. Because thanks to it, I realized when my mindset changed, oh, this is like life is not the same all year round. There is actually some ebb and flows through it. There is a beauty here. Like life can be more exciting if I learn how to ride that wave, how to swim with the current instead of swimming against the current.
Right.
So resisting and surrendering to it. Now, this is the Seasonal Movement podcast, Ari, and I really want to start kind of turning things out into what awareness has come to mind when it comes down to seasons. And from your own perspective, there is no right or wrong answer, but I know that there has to be so many links with a seasonal environment. And I just want to hear from your perspective on that.
Absolutely. I would say the biggest one, right, is when in the summertime. In
Okay.
the summer, we have to understand when you have ADHD, one of the executive functions of your brain that you struggle with is emotional regulation and impulsivity, right? Impulse control, meaning that it's already very natural for you to get irritated, and it can happen quite easily, right? Now, when it is hot, right, and we're uncomfortable, and especially if you're in a place where it's like 95 degrees Fahrenheit plus 3% humidity, it is gross, it's uncomfortable, right? And you're getting more irritated, like much more than you would without it being so hot out. So personally, that is that is one of the
Kryptonite.
part, right?
Kryptonite. That's kryptonite for
It's
Superman.
kryptonite. But my wife knows when I come home after being in the sun, she knows I'm sitting on the couch for 15 minutes drinking some cold water and don't bother me, right? Let him chill, let him relax, let him get back to himself.
I wanted to ask that question, the relation between summer and winter when it relates to dopamine. When you were talking about dopamine regulation, that was the first thing that came to mind because not just the heat, but there is also so much sensory activity happening in the summertime compared to the wintertime, at least where I live, and every place and everybody's life is different. But in the winter, the trees are gray, they have no leaves, there is less animals grooming around, there is less social interaction, there is less holidays. It seems like in the summer you look at the same tree and it's full of life. There is a square, there is a bird, there is there is all this stuff happening. The wind moves the tree, sound, visual, smells, social dynamics completely go up the roof. People is outside more. There's even people is spending more money. Business goes up. So how does that relate? Again, you already kind of touched, and it might just be that period. But when
Hmm.
it comes down to that dopamine, is that dopamine positive or negative? Because it might be an excess here, or in the winter is when it's negative because there is not a natural outlet, and that is part of the work that you do. How to balance those two, perhaps.
So personally, I would say that I think I have more dopamine in the summertime. Dopamine is harder for me in the winter because, yes, I don't like when it's blazing hot out, right? But I would prefer heat over rain and snow. I don't like when it's freezing cold. I'm very uncomfortable when it's very cold. And when you're uncomfortable, right? And the reason why you're uncomfortable is because of the season. It affects your mind, right? And it affects the way that you can do things. So if I'm already, right, as an ADHD man, struggling with having healthy levels of dopamine, now on top of me being in an environment where I'm uncomfortable, it's just making that situation much, much harder for me. And that's when you have to have plenty of tools in your toolbox to know how to deal with that.
So, are some of those tools also taking into consideration the ways that we can bend the environment in our favor? Perhaps in the winter, one of the things that happens in the winter is that the light goes down. Like there's less available
Right.
light. Also, depending where you live, but for most of us, there's that relation. Whether it's that it goes to 100 to 50, or whether it goes to 100 to 80, there's just a diminishment of the light,
Mhm.
and that's just one example. So we do have tools perhaps to use a happy light, or perhaps to, again, the rate of exercise that we do, or the
Right.
timing of that exercise, or even the importance actually changes a little bit between one season or the other. Again, to bend that environment so we can achieve that duality that we were talking about, like achieve a healthy balance there. Is that something that comes into consideration within the way that you see actually work well for everybody?
Absolutely. And I would say that even though a person may be in an environment that is actually like not really being so suitable for them, right? It's bringing them down, and that environment could just be the seasons, right? Because it's summer or it's winter and they're not responding so well to that season. You have to make the best of your situation, right? So even though I don't like the winter, right? Maybe I'm gonna make some hot cocoa, you know, and have fun with it. Cuddle up with a blanket, you know, read a good book, right? If it's too hot outside, maybe that's the perfect time for me to jump in a pool, you know, and do that because you can't do that in the winter, right? Like make the best of your situation, make the best of your seasons, you know.
So I was that was gonna be my next question. Just by the way, that's my philosophy of life as well. Like the summertime, I have probably missed 5 days of pool so far. I am in the pool every day with my kids. 6 p.m. is like the cutoff pool time. But the question comes with novelty. Novelty is that one activity that we enjoy during a certain period of time, then it goes away. It might be something completely new. It might be something that we haven't done in a while, something that is not the thing that we do every single day. When it comes down to novelty, is there a perhaps a wear off feeling that goes a lot faster when somebody with ADHD, perhaps like, okay, this is kind of novel. I like it today. I like it tomorrow. I like it next week. And then all of a sudden, I need to move on. Like, I don't get the dopamine hit in a faster rate that somebody that we call, a more balanced, neurochemical brain, whatever we want to call it, right?
Right. So I'll give you an example. Okay. Say you, Ruben, you bought me a sweater, right? Just because you loved me and you wanted to buy me a sweater. And let's say I loved this sweater, right? I loved it. I loved it on Sunday. I loved it on Monday. I loved it on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I slept in it. Come Friday, I can't look at this damn sweater, right? I can't look at this thing, right? Come Saturday, keep it away from me. Sunday, I'm thinking about throwing it in the trash. Monday, I love it again.
Okay.
And that's what it can be like, you know? It's like, boop, 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 boop. It's not that we have, we don't have multiple personality disorder, but it's like when we get attached to something, especially when it's new and we like it, we get really attached to it. And then it's like overload. We're like, get that away from me. I don't want to see that thing anymore. And it's like, where is it?
So
I miss it.
So in my method, novelty is something that I want to bring to my life consistently, and I want to make it part of my life. Why? Because over time we get that decrease of dopamine, that decrease of endorphins. We stop enjoying what we're doing the longer we do it, with very few exceptions. But what I find interesting through my seasonal method, which is creating a routine for a specific season, is that novelty is part of that routine. Like, novelty is actually encrusted, like in every single behavior, whether it's just a little bit, but or whether it's a lot. It's just equal. It's properly distributed throughout behaviors, habits, things that we gotta do, like sleeping, like exercising. But also, I have a section that is novelty, and I just wonder, like from my perspective, I can't stop but wondering if 3 months is enough or is too long, because I feel that for me 3 months is like the sweet spot. Like, it's starting to become a little too long, because I also enjoy that change. Like, I'm a very dopamine driven person. I'm constantly into dopamine. Like, that is my neurochemical based on my biology. I have done studies. That is my neurochemical. But I can still I can still stick to it. Perhaps, like, okay, after 2 months, but I'm gonna do it because I have one more month. So it's like finding that sweet spot is so important, and
Mhm.
that's so unique to all of us. Can you testify on that? Like, learning about yourself, your uniqueness, and finding that sweet spot. How you get to do that? How you coach people into achieving that state?
I just interviewed someone literally just a few days ago, and we talked about this. And he said it beautifully. He said, if you want to get to know somebody, right? Like a good friend, what do? You hang out with that person, you get to know him. If you want to get to know yourself, you need to hang out with yourself. You need to get to know yourself. And a beautiful way to do that in Hebrew, we call it hitbodedut, which is basically private meditation, right? It's a speaking meditation. And you could speak to God, to the universe, whatever you believe in, right? Hum, clap, sing, right? Humming is unbelievable because the frequency that comes with humming is like extremely powerful, and it can reawaken our nervous system when we're feeling very stressed. But the best way to get to know yourself is to be with yourself, to take that time and get to know you.
I find that so enlightening, and I have gone through that process. Like, that's what I do, because over a decade, I have had to pay attention to the environment, because it was obviously affecting me in ways that I didn't realize. And that awareness just kept growing and just keeps growing to this day, just keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing. And it's just matter of being present. At the beginning, it took me to look back and be like, is this what happened last year? Is this what's happening every year? Okay, I haven't paid attention to it. I'm going to start paying attention now. So I feel like that discovery, the hanging out process, is something that you discover over a long period of time.
Right.
And in so often in today's environment, you want to get that magic pill, that one pill that you take once and it completely changes you. But in reality, you have to be taking that pill consistently, which it comes down to awareness. Like that is a free, very powerful pill, which is to be aware and get to hang out with yourself every single day. Now, I think we're kind of getting here towards the last few minutes of the podcast. And again, it just comes down to seasonality. Since the last time we spoke, have you noticed something that has popped? We talk about, I'll say, a month ago, and we prepare for this episode, and we talk about, this is kind of the things that we have in common that we can talk about, which I'm sure I miss a few of them. But I'm curious when I bring the seasonal factor to light. I often find that somebody 2 weeks later realize that something is happening in their life that actually is happening every year, but now we realize it. Or there's all sorts of examples. Maybe you're talking to somebody and somebody say, no, I hate this season, or this, like this is happening. And then you ask a question and you realize, well, this is just happening right now. It doesn't happen all the time. Is there something in the environment right now, aka the season, is bringing something out of you? Have you seen some of that light up and come to light?
Yeah, my wife is using the air conditioning much more, and it's increasing my electricity bill. um,
I bet it's pretty hot there right now.
oh, it is brutal, man. It is
Yeah.
brutal. I definitely. There was the other day. Like you're the first. You're the first person that brought seasonal coaching and just how we could be affected by the seasons, and I've been fascinated with it ever since. And I will say that when I am getting more heated up, more irritable because of the heat, right? Before meeting you, I definitely did not think that, I wasn't like, I knew the sun is making me like, flustered, right? But I didn't like think deeper than that, right? You know? And I think it's important. And I think the work that you do is extremely important and can help a lot of men that struggle with ADHD, because we have to understand that there's always going to be summer, and there's always going to be winter, and there's always going to be, these seasons. They're not going anywhere. And there's going to be things about each season that brings discomfort to my life that may increase the things that I struggle with, make things harder for me. Even though it's already hard, it's going to make it harder. And at that point, I need to understand something. I need to understand that when I'm in this situation, that when it's blazing hot outside or it's pouring rain outside, that it's on me. And what I mean by that is I have something called free will, meaning I have the decision to choose how I want to respond to this situation. And if I'm taking time with myself and getting to know myself, then I will understand what happens to me and how I feel in each season, and I'll be able to prepare for it. And I say this a lot. Any of my clients can tell you I say this all the time, that a soldier doesn't prepare for war when he's in
Hmm.
battle. He prepares for battle before the war happens. And
Wow.
that's what we have to do constantly.
Wow. Wow. Like again, just going back to what you're saying, that is exactly what I do. It's like it took me time to become self-aware, and then I realized this is my superpower. Like
Hmm.
this is okay. I do real estate. I am a good on the phone. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm good at it. But I did it because of this. What is it? Because of seasonal routines. Because I was able to see the pattern. I was able to recognize the pattern from a lighting, temperature, humidity, from a social dynamic, from the length of the day, from my own self awareness, my own energy. And then I realized, well, I have to create this routine to bring this into harmony.
Hmm.
And then I started to realize this is not just good for me. Like, I'm not the only one that experienced the seasons. The season was a problem. Well, how many people are experiencing the seasons? So, like you're saying, is being able to turn that awareness into a plan, which that awareness takes a lot of time. That's what we're coaches for. That we learn, we created a method, we documented, and we found the easiest, fastest path from A to B. Maybe it's not the fastest path, but it's the most sustainable, the one that will stick the long term and will bring the best benefits, the sweet spot.
Hmm.
And it's about knowing that the environment is going to show up on this way, which is different than this other way. So let me create a plan that will allow me to leverage that environment compared to I'm just going to create a plan that leverages all environments at a medium way. We don't recognize, we don't say that when we do it, but when we say we have a routine and it's the same routine all year round, that's essentially what we're doing because it's going to work to a certain point. It's going to work kind of in the middle, but when there's those extremes on the summer and on the winter, it just doesn't work or biology gets out of whack, which is something that we slightly touch and I would love to explore perhaps in a different episode is different the different neurochemicals that are in play to be a healthy thriving human being and how the seasonal environment changes that. I'm going to leave you guys with that little seed, and that's how we're going to conclude the episode because I mean I don't want to make it more than 1 hour long. So far it has been such a rich episode. If you guys want to do another episode, if you guys want to see another episode where we keep drilling this subject up and expanding and going perhaps a little narrower on a specific subject but deeper, just leave it in the comments down below, where by the way you're going to find Ari's information there. If you're looking for coaching, if you're looking to get wisdom, that is going to be on the description down below. You can go in that click. You can get in contact with Ari. And thank you, Ari, so much. I'm going to let you close the episode. If there is something you want to share that will transform somebody, whoever is watching's life, what do you want to leave them with?
I would say that it's important to know no matter what you're going through, you're not broken. So many of us feel like we're broken. But if we can feel that we're broken, if we can think that we're broken, then we can think and believe that we could be fixed. All right? Very, very, very powerful. And, know that. Not like really know it and never give up. Just keep working, keep growing, just keep trying to be the best person you can be.
Wow. Thank you so much, guys. You hear it right. You're not broken. You're just out of alignment. You're out of rhythm, find your alignment. You got what it takes, and we're here to help you. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in our next episode.